And we still see the power of the ocean eroding our coastline, storm after storm and tide after tide. That's a big, big issue here, and something that we'll talk about with the island ecology as well. In 1602, a man named Bartholomew Gosnold came over from England in search of sassafras. He thought sassafras was the wonder drug that was going to cure the plagues running through Europe, and they're willing to cross an ocean to come find it. Fields of wild grapevines. And they say this looks like the vineyards back home in Europe. Let's call this the vineyard. We have no vineyard here. It just looked like a vineyard with the wild grapes. And the grapes are tiny little berries. We wouldn't make very good wine out of it. I don't know if you even could. Now, Martha is actually his mother-in-law. She paid for the voyage. She paid for him to find sassafras in Virginia, and he didn't find either. So he tells her, I found the most beautiful island in the world, and I've named it for you, Martha's Vineyard. So Martha's never actually been over here. He also had 3 daughters, and they all got the name Martha. He was only here for one day. The next day he goes over to the Elizabeth Islands. Those are the little islands that are out to our west. And he touches down on this little island called Cuttyhunk. Cuttyhunk's a tiny little spot, just a couple square miles over there. So most of the Elizabeths are uninhabited. Cuttyhunk has a town with like 30 year-round residents. In the summertime they get about 1,200 because sailboats will go in and they'll anchor in the little harbor over here. And they've got a couple of lodges on shore there. But it's very much a summer community, very much a summer community. And then the next relevant date for Martha's Vineyard is 1642, when a different guy from England named Thomas Mayhew Sr. buys Martha's Vineyard, Nantucket, which is over there, and the Elizabeth Islands. He gets all of it. He pays about $200 to England. That was a lot more money back then, but it was a small investment, really. He just had to show the king that he was going to do something with it. And he was entrusted by the king to essentially be our first governor here. This nice, big, beautiful harbor, it was named Great Harbor to start. And Europeans want to be able to access everything by water, right? And the biggest cities throughout the world are accessible by waterways. The tribe thought that was silly because they've seen the island change shape, they've seen storms erode areas away, and they nicknamed this Mosquito Land over here. So they basically said, fine, you can have that. We don't plan on bringing people in by ship. If they needed to make it to the Cape, they could launch a canoe from the closer points and make it over there. But if you really think about the way the island develops, and we'll talk about some of the different towns, Vineyard Haven is another port town. Oak Bluffs is our youngest town. Who's been to Oak Bluffs? The harbor was actually a freshwater lake. That harbor was Lake Anthony. So before that, this was just too exposed to have a town. So Oak Bluffs is our youngest town at about 150, 160 years old over there. But Great Harbor, to be called Edgartown, was one of the nicest naturally protected harbors in the world and a great place to bring in those ships. And I'll tell you more about Edgar as we get going here, but I think that's a good place for us to take a little pause and get walking. I like to kind of catch us up with some of the history that we can now start to see today, get us to a point in our timeline. So we had 1602 that Gosnold named Martha's Vineyard, and then 1642 is when the Mayhew settlement comes over and they start to settle in this town. And it's farming, fishing, it's modest living, but Mayhew Sr. wanted to bring over as many functional residents as possible. If there was a doctor, he'd offer up land for them to come over. Farmers, fishermen, blacksmith, builders, anybody else, boat builders especially, he wanted to get them land, typically right along the harbor. And we can still see when we walk around town, we'll still see some of the names that were here in those. The 90-year-old pagoda. This is the oldest and largest tree on the vineyard. It's the oldest and largest Japanese pagoda in North America. And it came here in a flower pot from China. When it first got planted as just a sapling, the homes used to be right up to where the curb is. When the automobile came to town about 100 years ago, the homes got picked up and pushed back to where they are now to put room for the sidewalk, but they weren't going to move the tree. The tree was almost 100 years old at that point. In the higher traffic areas, and as you get further out of town, it does have of all these flowers, but really some of my favorite things to see this when flowers come in. I can already tell that we're going to have a great year for the hydrangea. Great view of the Federated Church from here. We'll see the front of that after we walk around the block, but when you're standing in front of it, you can hardly tell it's a church. A lot of little about it. And just like we can feel the temperature drop as soon as you get in the shade of that tree, the town actually has restrictions on cutting down any tree or branches that provide public shade. Island back in 1642. He's buried right over here. This kind of has some information about him. He was born in 1592, lived to 1682. He lived to be 90. That's pretty good. That's like 220 today. Nice long life. And he's under a big rock right here. His wife and I believe a grandson and maybe a family pet are also buried kind of in this spot. This is the only spot on the block where we can still really see out to the harbor and across the Edgartown harbor over to Chappaquiddick. That's all Chappaquiddick on the other side. The way it all worked out, Thomas Sr. had paid enough people and acquired enough information that it was decided that the Mayhews owned it. But there's a stretch of land over to the north of town called Pease's Point Way, and that was kind of the settlement. Head right out this way. Patricia Neal, Roald Dahl's wife. She was an actress. She was in Breakfast at Tiffany's and a couple other things. So she lived in that house as well. The wall. We saw the top of the Federated Church from the other block. This is the building itself, and we'll take a peek through some of these windows on the side. You can see an original whale oil chandelier hangs in the center there. Nice choir balcony around the top. If you're needing to get on your toes like me, you can see the pews in there. There's actually 3 rows of pews, so there is no center aisle. They do have a lot of wood brought from there. Brought it here. We wouldn't have it here. We're mostly clay and sand, so we wouldn't be playing with the guys with the British because they would have made an example of us there. And again, once we get out front, you can see the steeple, but this was a long grass field with a white shell path that used to run right. 3 big churches in town. We're going to see all 3 in the order they were built. So this was his first one, 1828. He did a Baptist church in 1835, and then he also built the Old Whaling Church, 1843. This is our oldest running newspaper on Martha's Vineyard, right around 175 years old. It's been in this location for about half that. Printed once a week. Big page, if you've seen it at the store, you know, you can't really share the bench. But he opened this academy, and he created a lot of young teachers. Right? 8 or 9 of his students became Harvard professors. Turn right here. His lesson plan was shared with the students, and then their homework was usually to go share that lesson with their families and their neighbors. Single-handedly really increased the literacy rate. And we've got the Jared Coffin and the Holmes Coffin home over here. Pretty common that you'll see, you know, these strips of land that came from the harbor. There was another coffin that was down on the harbor, pretty much straight down. This guy was a home builder, and his younger brother was a mason, and he Frederick Bales Jr.'s warm-up before building the Old Whaling Church. It is now a private home. There's a nice spread in like a Town and Country magazine. If you Google search Edgartown Baptist Church renovation, you'll see some of the photos, like 25-foot tall ceilings in some parts of it. It's really beautiful. Great view again of the Greek revival, the Old Whaling Church. We'll go right out front and talk about that in a moment. Memorial monument. residence right here. They're just a little further down the block on this side. This shot's kind of looking right that same way. All right, we're gonna head just up this way a little bit.
Oh, see, Josh.
So Martha's Vineyard has actually never had a battle or a war on island here, but we have had many residents fight in the many different U.S. conflicts here, and this is just kind of a sign of respect for those who served and many who were lost in duty. There's also a park further out Main Street, Cannonball Park, that has some more sculptures and more inscriptions there. This is the third and final church in town, built by Frederick Baylies Jr. The old whaling church was a Methodist church. The Methodist religion really took off during the whaling era, and that's ultimately what spilled over to create the camp in Oak Bluffs. Frederick Baylies Jr. was a prominent supporter and really helped build out the tabernacle over there, which then ultimately created the town of Oak Bluffs. Around 1850s, 60s, and 70s is when those gingerbread cottages replaced the canvas tents and turned to be the summer community that it is today. So it's used for a bunch of different things. It's owned by the Vineyard Preservation and Trust, which is hosting the Taste of the Vineyard was 2 nights ago, and then kind of like an auction fundraiser dinner is tonight, charity evening. And they have other buildings on the property that we'll see, like the Dr. Fisher House and the Vincent House that's in the back there. But this one, again, started construction in 1838, finished in 1843, and the Methodist religion had grown so much that they had to move out of the town hall and into this building before they were even done building it. 120 pews inside that holds 805 people, so when they have the big all-island town meetings, they'll host it in this building. The biggest meeting. Landscaping is spectacular. The flowers around really just beautiful. You'll see different things come into bloom really every week or every month throughout the season. And it's a good example of a cape, a full cape, which these half, 3/4, and full capes are basically. Full one is 2 windows, a door, and 2 windows again. A half cape is 2 windows and a door, and a 3/4 has 3 windows, so 2 door and then 1 window. And those were pretty much the styles that we had before we switched to Federated Greek Revival and now the Victorian. The Vincent House back there, built in 1672, and again the oldest unaltered structure on island, but it was moved here from the south side. It used to sit next to a saltwater pond, and its old foundation is now underwater, so good thing they moved the home over here. Here's house here. This was built in 1840. Dr. Fisher made more off whaling than anybody else in the whale era. He came out here to make house calls as a young doctor, but he realized everybody was making more money than he was. And he married into the Pease family. And he was given a dowry equal to Christina Pease's weight in silver. Here, honey, have another cheeseburger. And with that, he purchased these scales that were down on the harbor. He then opened a candle factory, an oil processing factory. He opened the Martha's Vineyard Savings Bank. This guy was involved in so many different things. And when he showed up at a town hall meeting, he was so well respected because he was making everybody money, whether they worked for him or worked in some other business around him. You know, all ships were kind of rising with the tide. So we had a select board after Thomas Mayhew Sr. had passed away. He was the governor, and then we moved into a board that usually had 5 to 7 representatives. But if he showed up at a town hall meeting and felt strongly about something, pretty much everybody agreed with this guy. Very well respected right away out here from Colorado. And if you can, send your family, send your friends, keep it in mind for this visit or another visit. If you're looking to do anything else while you're here, you can always just reach out. And I'm always happy to just give you directions and other suggestions and things.